So I, a female teen, have a mom who got diagnosed with ovarian cancer and it spread throughout her body. She put up a good fight for a while. About a month ago, her doctors decided it would be best for her to be in a home hospice facility. My mom agreed. Before she got put in hospice, she was at the hospital for a while, trying different treatments for her cancer. My grandparents. Her parents got temporary custody since she couldn't take care of me. Since I was 5 and my parents divorced, I spent every weekend with my dad. I enjoy the weekends at my dad's. 5 years ago, he married my stepmom, and I got 2 stepsisters. Well, my dad's house isn't that big, so my stepsisters share a room, and whenever I stay, I sleep on the couch in the living room, so it isn't an ideal place to visit all the time. Well, since my mom got put into hospice, I've wanted to spend as much time with her as possible, so my grandparents didn't force me to go to my dad's. They understand that I want to spend time with my mom. Well, it's upsetting my dad that I don't want to visit him, even though I explained that I want to spend more time with my mom. Today, my dad and stepmom showed up at my grandparents' house, saying he's my dad and it isn't right that they don't encourage me to see him a couple of times out of the week. My grandparents said I could make my own decisions and that I had every right to prefer to be with my mom than stay at his house. My dad talks about how it's part of the court agreement, and he'll take my grandparents to court if he has to. I stepped in and said, if you make us deal with the family court while my mom is on hospice, and we're just trying to spend as much time together as possible, I'll never forgive you. My stepmom put her 2 cents in, calling me a brat for trying to guilt-trip him into letting me not see him. She tried saying she understands I want to spend time with my mom, but that doesn't mean I can just stop seeing my dad. In my mom's will, she stated she wants me to live with my grandparents full-time, but continue to see my dads on weekends if I want to. The idiot. Your stepmom doesn't understand that you want to spend your limited time with your mother, or else she wouldn't be trying to take it away. They have a right to want to stick to a court-ordered contract, but this is a temporary extenuating circumstance, and it's not unreasonable to be upset with them for not being willing to make an action for your sake. Also because there's not even a good space for you to sleep when you're there. I wonder if taking your grandparents to court would blow up in their faces. His wife called you names, and he allowed it. You don't need to care about his feelings, because he clearly doesn't care about yours. Honestly, it sounds like something that you should make permanent depending on your area. You are old enough that if it did go to court, your opinion would be immediately considered. Immediately, I considered the fact that they don't even have space for you, which means they'd likely not be able to get custody in most areas. If there's not a bedroom, even if it's shared, for the kid, that's a non-starter. I'm just sorry you're even in this position. Your father shouldn't be putting you through this. I tell him to go back to court and let him explain why he wouldn't let you spend all your free time with your dying mother in hospice. Of course, he'll look foolish, and I'm pretty sure most judges will laugh as they dismiss him. I can believe that your dad is serious, but his ego is so big that he thinks the court will force a daughter to visit while a mother is dying. This former caseworker doesn't think so. That is exactly my thought. The stepmom is pushing the court BS. As a possibility of you inheriting money, or perhaps the grandparents will pay them child support if you live with them full-time. She has no rights and should have zero opinions here. You're not her kid. Your dad is not a dad. Stand your ground. Agree. The stepmom probably doesn't want your father to pay child support to the grandparents. You poor thing. I am so very sorry. Spend as much time as you can with your mom. And if they try to take your grandparents to court, they won't get too far. Hopefully, your grandparents can get permanent custody of you. They need to let the court know about this little event. Document everything. This is only going to get worse. I'm a 45-year-old male and my ex, Emily, is a 46-year-old female. We got together 3 years ago and broke up last year. My son, Leo, is nearly an adult, and Emily's son, Nate, is a teen. Emily and her son moved into my house in June 2021. She and I were supposed to have split custody, 1 week each. However, at the end of September, Nate told us that his father wasn't always there and that he was often alone and asked us if he could stay at my house. Actually, Emily and I said yes. I realized quickly that Emily wasn't taking care of Nate when it wasn't her week. And for her, it wasn't her responsibility. This was one of the main reasons for the breakup. When Nate was here, I was the one taking care of him. Well, Emily and I broke up in February 2022, and she left my house in April. I was worried about Nate, so I proposed to Nate's father to help him take care of his son. Long story short, he said yes. And now during Nate's father's week, I have him and Leo at my house. Nate still has his room, and everything else is the same as before. Leo's mom and I have more money than my ex, so I give the same amount of money to Leo and Nate when they go out, so he won't feel left out. And I buy things for him when needed. Perhaps Emily never said anything about this arrangement. This summer, like before, Leo and Nate went to spend a few weeks with my parents. We also took Nate with us when we went abroad. I paid for everything in September, and everything resumed the same. I had Leo and Nate together for 1 week, taking care of everything. My ex-wife and Leo's mom are also helping during their time. He has a sleepover at her place, and she and her husband often see his games. Now, the issue last week was that Leo told me that Nate's sports gear was too deteriorated for him to use. I asked Nate, and he said he was too ashamed to tell me and was trying to save money to replace it. So this weekend, we went to buy everything he needed. I admit that I felt bad for not realizing it sooner, so I went a little overboard. I bought him some more expensive equipment. I want to add that it's not unusual for me to buy things for Nate. On Monday, Emmy called me to complain about the new gear and told me that she needed money too and felt it was unfair of me to give and buy stuff for her son and not help her when I had the money. She has a job and was complaining about not being able to have new or expensive stuff. Yesterday, I had dinner with friends and told them everything. 2 of them told me that they thought it was a little selfish of me not to help someone in need when I had the money. They also raised the fact that my ex-wife and I were planning ahead to help Nate through college, that it was a big commitment, and that it was crappy of me to choose who to help from my past. Is it really awful of me to refuse to help her when I have the money too? I feel like I don't owe her anything. They also raised the fact that my ex-wife and I were planning ahead to help Nate through college, that it was a big commitment, and that it was crappy of me to choose who to help from my past. I admit that I am well financially, but I worked very hard to be where I am today, and I don't want her to benefit from that. To me, it sounds like Emmy's jealous and wants to live a more luxurious lifestyle on your dime. And her cry. She has a job, and I'm guessing she gets paid alimony or some kind of child support. Then we see how often that money goes to the mom's purses and nights out while the kids eat scraps. Tell your friends to help her. I'd be grateful if I was broke, if she's even broke, and you took care of my son. Instead, she has an ungrateful handout like, "What about me?" I, 30 female, just wanted to say that my husband, River, 26, is a wonderful, funny, kind person. He's also incredibly handsome. I am not. River works in an industry that is very looks-based. I've noticed he's embarrassed and ashamed when he introduces me as his wife to his co-workers. And the events were miserable for him. He told me that he had stopped going to my events, and now they're a success. It used to hurt, but I realized that's just how the industry is, and people do judge me and talk behind my back because of what he looks like. People do that in general because I'm more attractive than him. I realized that he was trying very hard to succeed at his new job, and his new boss was an insanely judgmental person. She destroyed the career of an employee who reported the team for exclusionary behavior and fired someone who wore the same jacket as her once. For example, my coworker and I went to a fast, casual restaurant for lunch yesterday. It wasn't as crowded as the other places during the lunchtime rush. His boss and his coworker were already there. Unbeknownst to me, I saw him immediately, but I pretended I didn't. However, it turns out River's boss and my coworker went to the same business school. Not unusual. They caught up and introduced us all to each other. Instead of saying that I was his wife, he shook my hand and said, "I'm nice to meet you." He sat next to my coworker and across from his coworker, not deliberately. He didn't say I was his wife, but neither did I. I felt like he was looking at me, but when I looked, he looked away. When I got home later that night, he was crying. He said he didn't know what he did for me to ignore him. And if our marriage meant so little, why didn't I just take off my rings? I told him I didn't want to make him ashamed of me. He got very quiet.
You're the idiot for marrying a person that's embarrassed to introduce you as their spouse.
Is it never in a million years would I pretend I didn't know my husband because I felt so ugly that it would affect my work? Why aren't you guys even together? Your description of how your husband acts when he introduces you is opposite to his reaction when you pretend not to know him. I suspect that some of your personal beliefs and body image issues are coloring your interpretation. You need to have a heart-to-heart with him and get on the same page. If your career has that many horrible people surrounding you, it might be good to remind yourself of the importance of your mental health and the existence of other jobs too. This op's husband repeatedly tells them that they're unattractive and ugly enough to ruin their work events and embarrass them. I don't blame Op for having some body image issues. He's been repeatedly embarrassed by you, and you do one thing in his interest, and now he's crying. That could be a taste of how he's made you feel all this time. What a gaslighter. He could have known you're his spouse even before introductions began, like when he saw you. You pretended due to his past behavior. Instead, he pretends innocence and dumps the blame on you. No matter how good-looking he is, that all crashes to a negative for treating his spouse like he does. You don't deserve that ugliness. Either get counseling to strengthen this issue up or break up. No spouse should treat their partner this way. No spouse deserves such humiliating treatment. Finds a friend, my 23-year-old stepfather, Rick, has been married to my mother for 8 years. I'm getting married to the love of my life, a 23-year-old male, in a few months. My wedding will be Christmas themed, as it's my favorite holiday, and I've always wanted to get married around Christmas. My stepfather, however, never liked this idea. Yesterday, I went to my mother's house for her birthday, which was lovely. Unfortunately, my stepfather pulled me aside after dinner and brought up the wedding. He demanded I change my wedding day as it was too close to Christmas, even though that's the point. It's not even on Christmas. It's a few days after. I said that no, I would not change my wedding day for him. He said that it was selfish to make the holidays all about me and Christmas was the day to celebrate Christ, not me. We got into an argument to the point where he started screaming at me, saying I was an idiot and unreasonable. I yelled at him, telling him if he didn't like it, then he shouldn't come. I stormed out of the house with my fiancé, and my mother called me earlier, saying that I didn't have to change the day, but please let my stepfather come. My stepfather called me an idiot and asked how I could do this to him. And now he wants an apology. I'm starting to think I should apologize, though not for being an idiot. Selfish. It's selfish not to plan your wedding entirely around my religious beliefs. Wait till stepdad finds out that people are walking the earth at this very moment who were born on December 25th. Then tell him that trees are pagan and have nothing to do with Jesus' birthday. My stepfather asked me how I could do this to him. To do what to him? You didn't disinvite him. You said he didn't have to come if he didn't like it. The only way I would have let him come is if he shuts up about the date now and forever. But since he seems to take this personally, that's not likely. So very sorry you have to deal with such nonsense at what's meant to be a happy time. You are the idiot for scheduling a wedding that time of year. It's stressful enough for normal people before throwing a wedding in there. That's just cruel to your guests. Just expect a healthy amount of no responses. Many people go out of town during the holidays. My mom and I are in therapy right now with my stepdad. She met him when I was 7, and she moved my brothers and me with her when I was 8 to be with him and his daughters. At the time, she sat my brothers and me down and told us that she wanted us to be a family and that my dad's family didn't want to welcome my new stepdad and his girls into our family, and the girls like their grandkids. We knew that we needed to go to them so they wouldn't be around more rejection via my dad's family. What I didn't know then but do now is that my stepdad's kids were planned with his wife, but she couldn't have them biologically, so they used an egg donor. But she ended up not being able to get over the lack of biology and left, and her parents didn't consider them grandkids either, so all three were gone before the girls were 5. So my mom moved the 4 of us 18 hours away from home to set up a new home with my stepdad. She left a really good job and friends, which was her sacrifice. My brothers and I were never okay with this. They were especially resentful of it, and there was a lot of fighting between them and our mom over the years, and them and our stepdad. They both chose to move home once they finished high school. They also were very outspoken to Mom that the sacrifice she always talked about as being worth it wasn't to them. Mom and my stepdad started to realize in the last year that I wasn't likely to be the one to stay local after high school either. My mom also noticed how snappy I could be with her and my stepdad regarding my extended family. It's true. Whenever my stepdad would ask me not to talk about my paternal family around his girls or to hide stuff they sent from the girls, it would make me angry because he was the one who asked for them to not be around. And I got annoyed with my mom for similar reasons because she made a choice. And so we started therapy. I have opened up about my feelings somewhat over the last few weeks. Then in our last 2 sessions, it came up that Mom just wanted us all to enjoy the good that came from our sacrifice and to feel it was truly all worth it. I said it wasn't worth it to me. That the loss of having my extended family around me was not made up by having a stepdad and stepsisters. And if anything, it was the reason I had never grown to love them, because having them meant not having the people I loved. And they weren't worth that to me. The therapist had me leave the room because my mom was getting angry last session. And afterward, Mom and stepdad told me that I was being unfair and cruel. Finally, Mom told me she did her best, and all 3 of us had punished her for trying to be happy. Am I the idiot? I wonder what the therapist said to your mother and stepdad after you left the room. I'm curious about that too.